Join me today as I make everything rhubarb. I've got rhubarb in my freezer that I need to use up before this year's rhubarb starts growing. So I'll be making an assortment of recipes, and you can find the recipes down in the description. I also have some dairy that I really need to use up. It's almost at its due date. So I decided that I would be making some homemade yogurt today. And I actually learned this technique 20 years ago from a Lebanese woman that lived upstairs from me. And she showed me how they traditionally make Lebanese yogurt. We're in spring break right now, so I've decided that I'm going to be making yogurt parfaits with fruit on the bottom. And I'm going to do that so that my kids can just grab them and have it as a snack whenever they want. I'm also heating up some rhubarb right now for a rhubarb ice cream that I want to make. So I've got quite a few things going on here in the kitchen. I'm measuring out about 5 cups of rhubarb, and to that I'm going to be adding 2 cups of sugar and then later on some gelatin. And that's for a rhubarb mousse ice cream. So delicious. You have to try this. Everyone in my family loves this so much that I don't think I'm going to be buying regular ice cream because it's so much more creamy and delicious and simple ingredients. And here I'm going out to this new nursery that my husband built this spring. And this is where we're going to be starting all of our seedlings. He worked really hard on that. And he's out picking carrots while I'm working in the kitchen. And I'll be out here later today picking carrots as well. These are carrots that have been overwintered, and it just happened as a surprise that they're still in excellent condition and we're able to sell them. So that's really good news. And I'm back in the kitchen working on these delicious treats. So with my rhubarb, I need to cook it until it's kind of falling apart. And then with my yogurt, I need to get my milk to the boiling point and then shut the heat off and let it cool down. So I'm scalding the milk and I'm doing the finger test to make sure that it's cooled to lukewarm. If it's too hot for your finger, you can't stir in the yogurt. I'm also adding 2 packages of gelatin, just plain gelatin, to my rhubarb. I need to add my gelatin to boiling water first, just so that it dissolves before I pour it into my rhubarb mixture. And I know I've got a lot going on here all at once, but that's kind of how it is in the kitchen. You're just kind of multitasking. So I'm working on 2 things at once. So I'm adding that gelatin mixture, and then we need to cool the whole thing off. Back to the yogurt. Once my milk is cooled off and I've done the finger test a few times, we're going to be adding 1 cup of plain yogurt to that milk. And you can almost consider this the same thing as adding sourdough starter to your dough mixture. It's kind of the same thing. It's a bacterial culture that we're stirring in there. And you can use any plain yogurt from the grocery store. I tried to find the most natural looking yogurt that I could find. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put the lid on this and wrap it in towels and put it on top of our fridge, which is kind of a warm place. And we're going to leave it up there overnight. And if you want to take this a step further, you can actually turn this into cream cheese by putting the yogurt in a thick cloth and hanging it. So that's what they would do. And this is what she told me how to do it. And so anytime I've made my own yogurt, this is how I do it. I'm doing this on a Saturday and then I carry over to a Sunday, and I feel like sometimes it takes a couple of days to make big projects happen. So this is kind of a prep day. I'm also whipping up some whipped cream. I'm doing a whole liter of whipped cream, which is 4 cups. And then we're going to be adding that cooled off rhubarb mixture with the gelatin and the sugar. And that's going to be getting mixed directly into the whipped cream. And then we're going to be chilling that in the freezer, and it's going to turn into ice cream. I'm doing 2 batches of this ice cream because I actually have 2 liters of whipped cream in my fridge. So I'm using half the rhubarb mixture for 1 liter and 1/2 for the other. There are actually an assortment of mousse ice cream recipes in my vintage cookbooks. And interestingly, a mousse, which I always thought was just a really creamy mixture, was actually always made traditionally into an ice cream, and it was a way of making ice cream without having to churn it. So just a pro tip, you can turn anything into a mousse ice cream. The first batch didn't quite turn out as pink as I was hoping it would, so for the second batch I decided to add red food coloring. This is totally optional, and if you wanted to, you could add strawberries or raspberries for that pop of color, but because I just wanted the rhubarb flavor, I decided to add the food coloring. All I have to do is pop those into my deep freeze and let them set overnight. And we've been enjoying this. It is so, so good. So for the rest of that day, I went out and harvested some carrots to help out my husband. And I've been doing a lot of that work in the past week. And this is how we're making our money right now. And my husband just bought this used carrot washer. And so that's what's happening on our farm. Now this is the next morning and I'm checking up on this yogurt. I'm so curious how this has gone because it's actually been a really long time since I've made this homemade yogurt. So I'm taking the lid off and seeing what it looks like. And it thickened up quite a bit. I looked up online about making yogurt, and the longer it sits, the thicker it gets. But if it goes too long, it gets quite sour. So I'm going to be straining this off, and I used a flour sack cloth to do this. It's clean. And I'm going to be straining this off and then keeping it in the fridge for a few hours. Now, in all honesty, I would have let this go a lot longer if I wasn't filming this. But for the video's sake, I took it out a little bit quicker than I would have liked. It's not quite as thick as I would have liked. But this is how you do it. So we put it in the strainer with a cloth or a cheesecloth. And then we're going to put this in the fridge and we're going to let this strain out. And a lot of liquid will actually come out of this. It's turning out to be a really sunny day out there, and I'm kind of jealous that my husband gets to be outside because it's so beautiful. But I'm happy about what I'm doing inside, so it's all good. The next thing I'm doing is I'm using my baking mix. I've got a video on that. I'll link it down below. and I'm making raspberry rhubarb muffins. And I've got a recipe for muffins. You can add anything to it. So I'm using that recipe, and I'm just adding some cut up rhubarb that I chopped a little bit smaller, as well as some raspberries to it. And these turned out so good. It's my favorite muffin so far. What a great combo. I've had enough experience as a homemaker to know that during spring break, when all of your kids are at home, you need to have snacks, you need to have things that they can eat, or they are going to drive you absolutely crazy. So that's one of the reasons why I'm making all of this food. But I was also just really excited to try out an assortment of recipes using my rhubarb, because honestly, rhubarb is one of those humble plants that just gives you so much goodness. And I just love having rhubarb plants. They produce so much, they give you so much, and you can harvest them a few times in the season. So I love to stock my freezer full of rhubarb. Now, as much as I love strawberry rhubarb, raspberry rhubarb is actually my favorite. I actually like it better than strawberry rhubarb, and that's why I decided to do it in these muffins. And this was in the morning, so I was actually making us a brunch. And I've been getting in the habit of cooking up a whole bunch of bacon and sausage so that I have enough for the entire week instead of just a little bit at a time. Oh, it's kind of biting me that I only got one green oven mitt because I couldn't find another green one at the dollar store. So now I have to use my cloth instead. And oh, this was a good day. So I've got my biscuits going in the oven for our breakfast sandwiches and these muffins. Oh, they just turned out so delicious. And I'm going to be putting those into my cake stand, which will make it just look so appealing. So I cool these off for about 10 minutes in the tins, and then I take them out and let them cool off completely. These are the moments as a homemaker that I just love. The creativity that you can have in your kitchen and just making beautiful things for your family to enjoy. And it just makes me feel so accomplished. And I love days like these where you can just relax and cook. And honestly, it makes every other day afterwards so much better because you have all of this food. You don't have to run to the store and pick up this and that. You have an assortment of things for your family to eat. And those muffins just turned out so good. Lately, I've just been making us a brunch instead of a breakfast and a lunch. And that's been really working out for us. And that's what I'm going to be doing all spring break. Because honestly, I don't like making 3 meals a day. It's just too much for me. I feel like 2 meals is more than enough. And the breakfast sandwiches that we've been making are just so good and so filling, and they keep you full all day long. We're giving a peek to this yogurt and seeing how it's doing, and quite a bit of liquid drained out. And like I said, I would probably let this go longer, but I just decided it was time to pull it out and let's get on with it. So I'm going to be starting on the yogurt parfaits. And it was a lot more like cream cheese near the edges. So if you let this go probably overnight, it would probably get really, really thick. My idea with the fruit on the bottom was that I wanted to use raspberries and rhubarb, and I wanted to make it thicker by using chia seeds. I've heard of people making chia jams. So that's what I decided to do. And I added an entire package of rhubarb, which is about 4 to 5 cups. And then the rest of my raspberries, which was probably about 2 cups. And then I added 3/4 of a cup of sugar and a cup of water. And then I got this up to a boiling point, and I wanted everything to soften and cook, but I didn't want it to turn into mush. So I wanted it to stay a little bit more structured. Then I added about 2/3 of a cup of chia seeds, and this turned out great, but I probably would have just added about half a cup instead. It was a little bit on the thick side, but honestly, because the yogurt was a little bit on the thinner side, it worked out because when you stirred the whole thing together, it actually turned out great. And the chia seeds really complemented the raspberries because it gave that raspberry kind of texture. So all in all, this was delicious, and all of my kids have just been eating them constantly, and I've been eating them too. They're really, really good. I would definitely make these again. And I have a bunch of assorted sizes of mason jars, and this size is just perfect for these parfaits. So I decided that I was going to put the lids on and stick these in the fridge, and then people can have them whenever they want. This definitely got a little bit on the messy side, so I had to do a little bit of cleanup. But I can imagine doing these parfaits with blueberries or with any other kind of fruit. And you don't have to make your own yogurt to do this. You can just buy yogurt and make the fruit on the bottom, but it's just such a great snack. And also, if you work outside of the home, this would be a great thing to bring in your lunch. I definitely need to get myself more canning lids for the season, but I had those ones left over, and I'm just gonna keep reusing them for things like those parfaits. And I'm putting those muffins into the cake stand, and this is just a nice presentation. I thrifted this cake stand probably a year ago now, and I still love it as much as the day that I found it. So we've made the parfaits with the homemade yogurt, we've made the muffins, and lastly is my ice cream. And I just have to have a taste of this before I say goodbye. And I probably needed to defrost it a little bit longer, but this was just delicious. I definitely recommend. The recipe will be down below. And I will see you guys in next week's video.